Good day, Tragic here, and welcome to my final thoughts for Mage Knight Shades of Tesla, which is, it's a Mage Knight game. What can I say? I mean, it is a fantastic game. Mage Knight is right up there with the best games around, in my opinion. Now, there are issues with this game, like any other game, but really, Mage Knight is a fantastic game on all levels. There is a level of complexity which can make Mage Knight a little bit hard to get into, especially because it has such a shockingly terrible rulebook. Now, a lot of the real people who are really into Mage Knight, they'll tell you that the rulebook is really great. And there are pros and cons to it. Basically, the rulebook has all the information in it, okay? If you know where to look. The problem is you don't know where to look. People who have read the rulebook many, many times, like say myself, I know where to look. So if I want to look up a rule, I can just find it in about 30 seconds and it's clearly stated in the manual. But for people who haven't read the book a million times, it's almost impossible to find that tiny piece of information without reading the entire book. And added to that is that some of the rules are split, okay? Like for the achievement rules, for example, are in the walkthrough manual only and not in the other rule book. I mean, it's rookie mistakes. It's very, very badly arranged, even though it has all the information in it. And there's a lot of arguments about this because some people think it's the best manual ever. But the fact is, the Mage Knight rules threads are one of the most active rules forums on the Geek that I've been involved with. I mean, people are constantly asking questions. That wouldn't happen if the manual was good. That's just the bottom line. It doesn't matter how good you say it is or how good you think it is or how easy and logical the rules are, because they do have a certain logic to them, even though there's some counterintuitive stuff with resistances, which is extremely bad, that I think they actually greatly improved in the remake, the Star Trek remake. So, the resistances are definitely the most counterintuitive rules in the whole game. But it doesn't matter how good the logic of the rules are and how well it fits together and how well, in inverted commas, the manual's written, if people can't freaking understand it. And the fact is, the rules section of the forum is absolutely chock-a-block, new rules questions every day, and that is a result of the rules and the manual, period. So I don't understand the arguments in the opposite, because, if it was a really good manual, then, the rules section wouldn't be full of these questions. And that is really the biggest detractor for this game, in my opinion, is, well, actually, also, as well as the rules being overly complicated, is the length of the game. I mean, the game is long. We're talking all-day session for a 4-player full game, really. The game does get quicker, and people have got some house rules. Like, I've actually gone to places where people have used, those chess clocks to time everyone's moves, so everyone has a certain amount of total time for the game to do their moves. And every time you take a turn, you take a little bit of time off your total. And that seems to work very well, but the real joy in this game is the puzzle aspect. Getting all your cards and working out the best combination for these efficient attacks and sort of figuring it out. So this is really at its core a puzzle game, in my opinion. But it's long. It's long and it has quite a complicated rule set, which is a huge barrier for some people. Now, I like complicated games. I think they're good and I enjoy long games. But I can understand where people are coming from with this, because this is not a game for everyone. This is a game that I've heard described as unneedlessly complicated, and I can completely understand what that means. What they're saying is that complicated rule sets don't actually add to the game. They don't improve the style of game. They just increase the amount of complexity of thinking when you're trying to do what you would like to do. So there's a difference between complexity of choice or complexity of decision making versus complexity of rules finagling, is how I'm going to put it. So like my example is in war games. You often have war games where you're trying to do global strategies, you're trying to outwit your opponent, and that is the game. The game is actually all about that. But But if you have to say, okay, I'm standing in a swamp hex, that gives me +2 to sniper but -1 movement, but it also gives me an extra bonus to my cover, but I can't shoot across there because there's like a tree in the way and that gives him a +2 bonus. While he's standing on a hill, he gets an extra +2, which negates my -2 cover, blah, 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 blah. That isn't actually strategy. That isn't making the game design better, in my opinion. It's just making it more complicated to run the game. The actual overall gameplay decision that the player is making is, I go here and then I can attack him there and flank him. That's what they're thinking in their brain, and that's what the game designer is trying to allow to happen. That is actually where the strategy is, where the global or tactical strategy lies, in the decision making of the player trying to outwit the opponent. But some games are so rules heavy that the focus leaves the overall strategy, it leaves the gameplay, and becomes all about how to achieve this inside the rule set. And I think that that is usually a very, very bad thing. Now, Mage Knight is right on the lower end of this problem. Like, wargames particularly have this problem. But it's still something that a lot of players will feel. They feel that the rules are playing them rather than them playing the game. I want to go over there and, attack that dungeon and fight a monster. But what they really need to do is work out all the resistances. They've got to work out all the things with their cards. They've got to remember the movement systems. There's a lot going on. And just to be clear, when I say, they've got to work out all the resistances, that is part of what makes Mage Knight so great. That sort of puzzle solving aspect. But what I'm saying here is not working out how to attack the monster. I'm just saying they've got to remember and keep in their brains how the game functions. Not how do I do it with the cards I have, which is actually a gameplay issue, but how you actually do it inside the game rules. Oh, I've got to remember this is plus and this is minus and this will halve that and this won't halve that. And that's what I'm talking about here. The complexity of the actual function rather than the game play. Having lots and lots of minutiae to work through and organize isn't the same thing as large strategic and, overall gameplay, in my opinion. I think they're actually often confused. And this problem isn't solely limited to rule sets either. For example, there's a designer I quite admire called Yul Rosenberg. I don't know how to pronounce names, but I think that's his. He did Agricola, which is one of my all-time favorites, and Glass Road, Patchwork, some really great games. But he also did Caverna and then later Feast of Odin. Now, Feast of Odin and Caverna both suffer from the same issue, in my opinion, and some people consider them fantastic games. I am not particularly one of them. And this is a similar issue to what I've just been talking about. Having, say, 10 tiles to choose from in an offer, that's a manageable gameplay device, giving the player choice and some strategic options looking into the future. Okay? And a good example of that would be Mare Nostrum's offer, or Through the Ages offer, which is another Vlad game, by the way. But in Caverna, and then taken to the nth degree in Feast of Odin, instead of having like 5 or 6 tiles, you've got like 80 tiles. You've got like 80 different actions or something ridiculous. And I don't know off the top of my head, but you've got so many things that you can do. And that is like the other version of this same issue. Complexity of rules is one thing, but also giving someone a billion choices isn't the same as making each choice deeply meaningful. And I think players and designers get really confused between complexity of rules and complexity of choice versus strategic and tactical thinking. And I don't think they're really linked. In fact, in some ways, I believe the more you can boil down rules into very simple rules with very simple choices, the tactical and strategic decision-making opens up, because it all takes place in the mind. You're not worrying about the rules. You're not worrying about your choices. It's just about your brain versus your opponent's brain. Great examples of that would be chess, poker, very simple rule sets, but huge tactical and strategic thinking. And I believe that some games get it completely wrong. And more importantly, I think it confuses some players. Some players think, this game is so tactical, but what they're really doing is basically just looking up, spreadsheet tables to work out how different cover works. Now, I understand that in some, that there's a type of war game which I call supply war games, and they're war games that focus very heavily on supply lines and the ability to keep the war machine running, or you've got games that are very, very... What I'm trying to say here is that there are no hard and fast rules. There are some games that have hugely complicated rules that are freaking amazing, don't get me wrong. And Mage Knight is one of those games, even though it's on the lower end of the complexity scale. But I do think this is an issue, and not just an issue for Mage Knight, which it is. This is an issue that pushes people away from this game, is the complexity, coupled with the rule book being kind of dodgy. But this is actually an issue in board game design, period, in my opinion. And Mage Knight does fall into that kind of trap. There's so much going on in Mage Knight that it can detract from the actual experience of moving your guy around and exploring and having fun and playing the game, because you're so focused on all the things you're trying to juggle in your hand. This isn't so much a problem for me personally, because I actually love that kind of stuff, in this particular case anyway. But it is a problem in general for some people, and I can really see how Mage Knight is a game that advertises itself as a type of game which it actually isn't. This isn't an adventure game. This isn't a fantasy dungeon crawler kind of game, even though it looks like it. It's just not. It's an incredibly time pressure game. Like you think, I can go around exploring, check things out. No, you've got to have very focused things on what you're doing. You've got to constantly push forward. The time pressures are quite large, and the efficiency tables, like the amount of efficiency you need to put into your turns, are very, very high. This actually leads to one of the unusual aspects of Mage Knight, really, and that is Mage Knight is a fantastic solo game. So if you play solo, it's got its own solo rules, or if you play like I do, which is multi-hand solitaire, absolutely fantastic game. And it's also a really, really great competitive game, because you're kind of doing your own thing, and it's sort of almost like a VP race or whatever when you play competitively. It's not so much I'm going to fight the other person, but I'm racing for the best VP score. But I actually think that this isn't a particularly good co-op game. And the reason I think that is because the way the rules work is usually, and this could just be myself because I'm a little bit of a control freak, but usually there's one person, which is usually me, who has to learn the rules, and everyone else sort of knows a little bit of the rules but doesn't really know the rules. So you have to spend so much of every turn explaining things to people. You are basically telling them what to do. It's got a terrible follow the leader problem, because they go, I want to do this. You go, well, you can't do that. You've got these cards, and these cards can only do this. And by the time you finish explaining to them, you've actually basically done their turn, because the efficiency is so high in this game that there's really only, while you have choice of what you want to do, your turns are pretty limited. Like, you basically have maybe one or two choices of what you want to do with the cards you have, because there isn't a huge amount of variance because the efficiency is so high. So by the time you explain what the cards do and explain what their choices are, you've basically done their turn. So in co-op games, there's that follow the leader problem where one person at the table, usually in this case the person who has the rules learnt, basically runs the whole game. And that's not good for co-op. So I actually don't recommend this as a co-op game. I recommend it as a solo game for sure, and a competitive game for sure. Because in a competitive game, you kind of leave each other alone, you're doing your own thing, and it doesn't have that same issue, right? Because usually if I'm explaining the rules, that same problem I just mentioned, if I'm explaining the rules, my explanation is actually hurting me, so that I become at a disadvantage because I'm giving them better turns. It changes the dynamic of that follow the leader into actually being helpful, rather than I'm commanding you to do this for me, you know what I mean? And, these all sound very negative, actually. So I feel like I'm being very negative here, because I do actually extremely enjoy this game. But what I'm trying to get across, I guess, is that Mage Knight is not a game that would appeal to everybody. And it's definitely not in a game that can appeal to people who like shorter games. I mean, you're talking, if you invite your mates over on the weekend for a 4-player, full conquest game of some type, some scenario that's full conquest. I mean, you are looking at 4+ hours easy. I mean, this is an all-day session type of game. And a lot of people can't play those, no matter how good the game is. It's one of the reasons why I made the mod. I mean, my playthrough, right? I mean, playing through on my channel is always really slow because I'm explaining, I'm yakking on and all this kind of stuff. But I think my playthrough is like 90 hours or something on my playthrough. It's like 29 turns plus those huge assault turns, right? And that's just too long for a lot of people to be able to play, especially people who have kids or they've got, small houses, like they live in flats or whatever. They can't leave the game set up over the week while they go to work waiting for their friends to come back next Saturday. That being said, Mage Knight, what makes Mage Knight so unique and so great is also the exact reasons I just explained why people might dislike it. There is a huge push in board games as they become more and more mainstream, which they are, to like the hardcore gamers in inverted commas are getting pushed to the side. The long game, games like Twilight Imperium, those 8-hour things like 7 Ages, 20-hour war games. They are going the way of the dodo. I mean, they're still around, but they're getting more and more and more niche. And Mage Knight is kind of a throwback to those kind of older sort of games. It's got that modern, very, very heavy genre stuff about it, like fantasy and all that kind of stuff. But it's still a throwback to the more complicated games of the past, and I love that about it. And the complexity in the puzzle solving, like making the best moves and all that, really is fantastic. In fact, I was always a big anti-deck builder. I never really liked deck builders, but Mage Knight really turned me around on how deck builders can be. I mean, Mage Knight basically is a deck builder, right? It's a deck builder with a board. But man, it is a good one. It is a good one. Now, when Shades of Tesla, the actual expansion we were playing, came out, it was absolutely panned by the fan base for component issues. And I tell you, I think they are completely unfair, these criticisms. Absolutely ridiculous, in my opinion. Now, it is true. There is a tiny color variation on the cards. Whatever. I have never, ever, ever noticed it while playing. I mean, the cards are all the way on the other side of the table on the offer, and you look at the ones that are flipped up anyway, and I've never had anyone comment on them. I've never mentioned it to anybody, and I've played this game quite a lot. No one has ever mentioned the cards looking different, ever. It's ridiculous. I mean, yes, it is technically not perfect. That is true. The other thing people complained about all the time is that the new faction tokens that came in Tesla were a slightly different size. They're a little bit smaller. Now, this is true, but it's also designed to be that way. That's actually not an error. That was supposed to be like that. And the reason is, as you saw in the playthrough, if you play the Tesla campaign, you have to separate all those tokens. So now you can separate it in seconds. You just go boom, 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 okay, smaller, 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 there's my tokens. And if you want to mix them all in, what's the difference? It doesn't make a huge difference anyway, because they're all, face-up tokens for the most part anyway. And as you can see in the footage I'm posting here, the tokens are different sizes, but once they're sitting in a stack, it's almost impossible to tell, especially when it's on the other side of the table. In my opinion, this is such a trivial issue, and it just got blown so out of proportion by the fan base at Board Game Geek. And it's just a non-issue as far as I'm concerned. And if you really have an issue with them being slightly different on the stack, stick them in a bowl, and then you can just grab them randomly, or a bag or something. Like I said, it's not 100% perfect. If the tokens were the same size, you could still sort them by looking at the factions. It would just take a lot longer. If the tokens were the same size, it could be considered better. To me, it makes zero difference. Absolutely, completely trivial. The cards, slightly different color. Sure, that is true, but at the same time, who gives a stuff? It doesn't make any difference. I mean, it's seriously... And the thing that annoys me about, because if you can tell, I'm a little bit annoyed. The thing that annoys me about the fan base here is that it was so minor, and the expansion is, in my opinion, freaking awesome. I love the Tesla expansion. I think it is so cool. I love the little, items you get. I like the way it focuses it removes a lot of the pressure on leveling up, because it allows you to buy units, a lot easier. I love the whole idea of the avatars and the big assaults. I mean, I think the Tesla expansion is actually fantastic. I love the Lost Legion as well. Like everything about Mage Knight is fantastic to me. And I just think that a lot of people were put off from Tesla from these horrendously unfair, in my opinion, comments about the components, which was just so minor. It just was ridiculous. So would I recommend Shades of Tesla to a Mage Knight fan? Absolutely. Not even a hesitation. If you like Mage Knight, grab Shades of Tesla. And I mean, you get a Mage Knight in it, you get this new scenarios, you get like those cool little items, like potions and stuff when you kill the faction monsters. It's fantastic. Now, one of the big differences with the Tesla expansion is that you don't really have to mix it in. See, when Lost Legion came out, it was actually an update to Mage Knight. It changed huge amounts of the base game as well as having expansion components. And what I mean by that is, in the base game, the Mage Knights were completely standard decks, like a normal deck builder. They had their own deck. But in Lost Legion, you replace 2 of those cards with 2 unique cards to that Mage Knight. So all the Mage Knights had their unique decks. Like you might take out Swiftness and put in Striding for Wolfhawk, for example. So that for straight away Lost Legion, you have to mix that in, right? And then also a huge amount of errata on pugs, on cards, spells, all these kind of things were changed. So you actually take out all these components from the base game and place in the errated versions of the cards. And some of this errata is quite drastic too. First expansion, Lost Legion, was designed by Vlad, the guy who did the original. The second one wasn't. Now, he actually recommends himself that the Lost Legion always be mixed in, because it is actually a fix to the game. It's like, this is what the game should have been kind of thing, you know what I mean? So you always have your Lost Legion components mixed in, except obviously for, Valcor himself, whatever his name is. But with Tesla, it's not the same. I usually play the game without the Tesla components completely, unless I'm playing the Tesla scenarios. And when I say components, what I really mean are the enemy tokens and the associated faction reward tokens. I actually mix in all the Tesla cards. The reason is, of course, is that the Tesla pugs, because of the quite drastic changes to the way that expansion uses experience, means that it's very, very annoying if you play a standard game to fight a pug and have to do all this damage and take all these wounds and you get like 1 experience. You know what I mean? While normally you get 5 or whatever. So, but you can mix it in. So basically what I'm saying is the Tesla expansion is more traditional expansion that is like an add-on, while the first expansion you kind of mixed in, it just becomes part of the base set. Now, you can play with Tesla mixed in, and I do that. I often do mix them in. I play with the Tesla tokens, and I also play with the rewards. And it works just fine. It's just a little bit harder because the way that the Tesla tokens handle experience is so different. And this is, again, why the Tesla tokens are a different size, because they are really separate. But it's fantastic. If you like Mage Knight, do not be put off by some of these reviews. It is freaking awesome. It is an awesome expansion. So the question really isn't, should you buy Tesla or should you buy Lost Legion? It's, should you buy Mage Knight? I mean, this is a game, it's most likely not going to see any more additions. And this is really a game where you should just buy everything if you like it, obviously. I mean, it is really, really good. I definitely recommend Mage Knight. I definitely recommend the Tesla expansion. And I totally recommend the extra Mage Knight, Krang, and Lost Legion. Like basically the whole thing is one unit as far as I'm concerned. Wow, I have been rambling on, so let me try and wrap this up. But if you are a new player that has never played Mage Knight, would I recommend this game? Definitely. I think this game is fantastic. It belongs in everyone's collection as far as I'm concerned. But I would suggest going to your local game group and getting someone to play it with you and teach you the game and just seeing if you like it, because it really is not for everyone. And I don't think that's a detractor for the game. People just have different tastes. And the game sort of looks like it'll appeal to a certain kind of gamer, the kind of gamer that plays Gloomhaven, for example. But it's not actually for that type of gamer, if you know what I'm saying. So if you've never played Mage Knight, definitely check it out. But I wouldn't rush out and spend the money buying it until you've played it at least a couple of times with someone who understands the rules and can run the game efficiently. Because if when the game first came out and no one knew how to play, there was a lot of terrible game experiences where people sat down and the game was just a mess and they had to look at the manual every 20 seconds and, that's not fun. But if you have someone who can teach you the game and play it with you, then you'll get a much more natural experience and understand if you want to play the game. Well, that is that. Sorry for rambling on so much this time. But I'll see you guys next time.